DIYers, hey, what's going on? Whiteboards with the Whiteboards channel. Thank you for watching. We're talking brakes today, and in the event that you've got that famous question, how do I tell or know when it's time to replace my brake pads? We are going to introduce you to two cool gauges that you can use, basically one or the other in your case. In our case, we've got both of them because we like both of them, but you can use these gauges to figure out when it's time to replace your brake pads. Let's get started and take a look. All right, DIYers, here we are at the workstation, and in front of us are two tools or gauges that you can use to check the overall wear and condition of your brake pads and help answer that question, do I need to replace my brake pads? And with that said, on the left-hand side, this is a really cool color-coded gauge. And as far as the measurements, it comes in metric as well as standard. And we will talk about that as we explain the tool. However, on the right-hand side is more of a pen-style gauge. And you'll notice right here, there is a little clip that you can clip this in a shirt pocket or in a pants pocket or in a clipboard or tool belt, etc. However, unlike this one, which again is in metric and standard, this is only in metric. So that may play a role in which one you want to purchase. However, with that said, I will move this to the side and I want to talk about this one first. Again, color-coded gauge with two different measurements, metric and standard. And as you can see, the three colors, red, yellow, and green. And I will bring a brake pad in momentarily and show you how to use this tool and really put the color-coded feature of this gauge into play. However, again, picking this up, and again, red, yellow, and green. And it starts with 2 millimeters or 0.0787 inches. And it continues all the way up to 12 millimeters and 0.4724, if you can see that. And nothing on the back side as shown there. And I'm going to separate it just a little bit more. And again, the color-coded feature of this tool may be something you like. And take a look at the actual prongs or gauge portions of each of the measurement options. You will notice that the very bottom red is more of a needle type tip as opposed to the complete opposite end, which you see right here. That is a significant difference in measurement and size and cut as this one down here. And I'll set that back down and I'll shift that to the side. Next, bringing in the pen style gauge, and again, DIYers, you might like this better than the color-coded gauge as it is much smaller and easier to hold as well as store. And again, there's that clip, and this little pin right here is going to retract as you use this gauge on the brake pads to get your measurement to ultimately determine whether or not you need to replace your brakes. And I'm going to push this pin all the way flush with that little stop tab there. And you'll notice right here, if I bring it even further out, you have calibrated and 0 millimeters. And again, this tool is only in metric, not standard. And just above this silver line, you see the 1.5, and I am going to turn it. And you go into what looks like blank squares, and they get smaller. And I'm going to take it all the way down to basically right there. And in between this silver line and the 3 end line is, again, a small empty box. And that represents 0, and it counts up by 0.5. So 0. 0.5, which is the empty block below 4, 1, 1.5. That is the first number that actually registers. And then from there, it counts up as whole numbers, no decimals. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 basically doesn't exist, but there is a small little blank square or rectangle at the very top. And here is what the top looks like. No measurement or number on the top. So again, 14 basically is the top. And as far as this tool right here, again, I will bring a brake pad in shortly and demonstrate using this tool to get a measurement to find out if you need brakes or not. We are now looking at used brake pads, and believe it or not, these are not really worn out. These are OEM brake pads that I removed from a Chrysler Pacifica not long ago, and these had just over 76,000 miles on them and were 6 years old. And looking at these, again, they're evenly worn. We still have an extremely visible and obvious wear slit or gap in the center portion of the pads, as you see right here, and compliments to OEM. However, I do want to bring in the color-coded gauge first and show you how to use it to determine whether or not you need to replace your brake pads. And I'm going to pick up this brake pad. And if you notice the wear tip right here, or J-hook, it's not above the actual pad. And that little J-hook or wear indicator will begin rubbing on your rotor and screeching and making a very annoying sound. And if that's already happened, DIYers, it is definitely time to replace your brake pads. However, if you are not getting screeching sounds and you're just curious whether or not you need to replace your brake pads because you haven't yet, again, we are going to use that gauge to show you. However, first looking at the overall condition of this pad, you will notice it is not unevenly worn, which is very nice. Dirty, again, 6 years old, 75,000 miles. So we don't expect it to look perfectly clean or new. However, again, this little wear slot in the dead center of the two pads or material surface here is still very visible. However, you are not going to be able to see this portion when the caliper and brake pads are installed on your car, so you will be looking at it like this. And in the event that you have no indent or slot currently on your brake pads, well, DIYers, these pads have worn out or weared to a point where this material has been rubbed off from brake usage over the years on your rotor. Chances are this J-hook or wear indicator is rubbing on your rotor and it's going to destroy your rotor, unfortunately. So with that said, I want to bring in this tool here, and when the actual brake pad is installed, basically looking at it like this, we are going to use this gauge to come in at an angle like this, and you want to measure from this very point here inside to where the brake pad mates with the rotor. You only have that gap to mess with or play with. And you will notice by using the very small 2mm, there's a lot more brake pad than the gauge. So I'm going to actually switch hands and continue moving up. And you will notice, continuing with the 3mm, again, there's more brake pad than gauge. And we're starting to get a little closer with 4mm. And let's see if 5. 5 looks really similar. And on to 6, let's see if it extends. And as you can see, 6 is ever so larger than the gap itself. And believe it or not, when the brake pad is installed and mating with the rotor, you will not be able to get the gauge inside if it's bigger, like I can right now. So I'm going to fall back to 5mm, as you see right there. And I'll set that aside. Let's look at the inboard. And again, evenly worn, very impressive. I see that wear gap or slot in the center, which means the J-hook or wear indicator is not rubbing on the rotor. And we'll start with the very bottom, significant more pad than the gauge, and that's a good thing. And as you travel further away from the red and into the yellow and closer to the green, the better. And looking at that, 5mm, so there's more brake pad material still available or left on this brake pad than the outboard that we just measured. And still going, check that out. And there it is. So you'll notice the green gauge at 9mm is larger than the gap or space in between the rotor and the brake pad plate. So that takes us back to basically 6mm. And I will set that aside. And DIYers, long story short, if you are in the red, it is 100% yes, definitely time to replace your brake pads. If you are in the yellow or amber, you still got some life on your brake pads. If you are in the green, there is no reason to replace your brake pads. In other words, they're basically brand new. Not literally, not technically, but there is a lot more brake pad material left on the life of those pads, so you can continue driving with those. And I will take this aside. I brought the brake pads back in, and we are now going to demonstrate the pen style gauge as you see right here. And this stop plate or tab will play a crucial role during this process. And I'm going to push this all the way in, and that will extend the entire needle or pin out of the shaft here or rod. And I will grab a brake pad. And again, quite a lot of material on the brake pad itself. You set this back. This is the inboard one. And the way this works, you can use the inboard or outboard when performing this test. However, it's good to do both since you're right there at the caliper. And the brake pad will be in the brake pad housing, and this part will be facing in, and the pad will be inside, mating again with the rotor. We have this little section right here, and we've got the plate. We are not going to measure that. We are measuring the material or brake pad itself. And the way this works is I'm going to use my finger or my pointer finger to demonstrate the rotor. And the rotor will mate directly flush with the pad itself. And from here, what you're going to do is carefully press this pin against the rotor that's mating with the brake pad and carefully push it in until this tab right here is flush with the pad housing. All right, DIYers, hey, a quick break in the action, and this is a very important thing to point out. Unlike the 3-color coded gauge that we just showed you, you can do that by yourself. However, with this pen style gauge, you will need to have the engine running and a second person inside the vehicle pressing on that brake pedal to ensure that you are getting the proper reading when using this specific gauge. Because right now, as your vehicle sits with the engine off and the brake pedal not pressed, there is a slight gap in between the rotor and the pad, and that's by design. However, again, when using this specific pen style gauge, have your engine running and a second person in the vehicle pressing that brake pedal to allow your brake pads to press against the rotor so you can then use this gauge to get the proper reading. And just go slow. As you see here, there is the measurement. Again, my finger is acting as the rotor, and the little tab here was flush. Coming up to the measurement, and I am looking at, maybe 6, just over 6, and into the 7. Check that out. Just shy of the 8 line, you can see. I'll set that aside. I'm going to move the brake pads out and set that down. Bring in our color-coded gauge and compare the two. Again, we had about 7 on the pen style. And moving here is the 6 and 8. And basically, if you remember with the color-coded gauge when we were using them, it basically came out to the exact same measurement. In our case, this one right here, as well as this one, and the 7 or 6 on this. I wanted to show you both of these tools, DIYers, in the event that you want to see these tools in action on an actual vehicle. Definitely check out the link above. We will perform this procedure or test using each of these gauges on a Toyota Corolla. And all we will do is remove the tire and again use the gauge to perform this test. You don't even have to remove a caliper, and believe it or not, you may not even have to remove your tire and rim. That just depends on the design of your rims. And DIYers, bringing in the brake pad. Again, looking at the overall condition of the pads, and again, we talked about the wear, and if it is rubbing on your rotor, definitely time to replace your pads because you are going to destroy your rotor when this starts scratching it or gouging it. In addition, in the event that this center slot or wear slot is missing or worn off, definitely time to replace your brake pads because again, that's going to lead to this wear hook or J hook contacting your brake rotor. Not good. And in the event that your brake pads are cracked, and parts of these pads or material have fallen off, yes, definitely time to replace your brake pads. And if they are unevenly worn, in most cases, that is not the brake pad's fault. That is due to a caliper slide not lubricated. So you may want to carefully lubricate your caliper slides. And in the event that your brake pads are cracked in all sorts of many sporadic lines or angles, however, nothing has fallen off, that is signs of extremely high heat on your pads themselves, and DIYers definitely look into why that's happening. In most cases, you will find that that is an issue with the caliper and caliper slides. And DIYers, that is it. Again, below in the comments and description are links on where to purchase these gauges. Definitely check those out, as well as additional videos that you may find helpful. From here, do us a favor. Below the video, you will see that thumbs up icon. Click on that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Definitely ring your YouTube bell. That'd be very helpful to us. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching.